When 3D CGI is used in anime, it's generally speaking been a bit of a mixed bag. Largely, it's been used as a cost-cutting measure, because why would you pay animators to spend hours drawing a single frame when you could just toss a character model at a computer and have it do the work for you? This is an oversimplification, of course, but I digress. Most of the time, I've always looked at it as an unwelcome but sometimes necessary tool used by animation studios to create the work that they do. While I can point to several examples of when CGI was used subtly to great effect, even going back to, say, the 90s when cell animation was still king, we can all think of a few times when an anime has used some god-awful CG, ranging from works that somehow cross the uncanny valley into so horrible it's good territory, but more often than not are works that infuriate us enough to go berserk. So when a series comes along that's being touted as a fully 3D animated series with no 2D whatsoever, I become heavily skeptical. It's a good thing then that the series in question today is so gosh darn purty, it doesn't matter anymore. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and today on Glass Reflection, we are taking a look at the 2017 anime produced by Studio Orange and based off the manga by Haruko Ichikawa, Houseki no Kuni, Land of the Lustrous. Let's jam. The story of Lustrous takes a bit to actually get ramped up, mostly because it doesn't start with any kind of base of reference for us to draw a comparison with narratively. If it started in a school, medieval town, or space station, we could at least start with a point of reference as to what we're in for. Instead, its story about anthropomorphic gems has a boatload of world building to do before it can start to draw us in, which can be perceived as one of its few flaws. All of the main characters in Land of the Lustrous are based off of real gemstones found on Earth, with particular emphasis placed on their strength or hardness, and their personality developed from the gem's actual traits. For example, Diamond is beautiful, strong, and lights up like a disco ball, while Cinnabar is distant, possibly toxic with all that floating mercury, and hides like a missing no out by the shore. All of the gems live in some kind of flatlands and don't have much of an outside purpose besides just living their lives and listening to the one monk dude who isn't a gem but has lived for hundreds of years, so probably isn't human either. Our main character, Foss, is a bit of a lazy layabout, mostly stemming from the fact that the actual gem, Fosfophylaito, is known for being extremely brittle and prone to breaking, something that happens here quite often. Despite this though, Foss is still trying to find some purpose to existence besides just lounging around and enjoying the sunshine. Much of the surface plot to the series has Foss battle internally with finding a raison d'etre, sprouted forth from a desire to help fellow gem Cinnabar who keeps to themselves and sticks to night patrols to avoid interactions with others. The journey that Foss takes helps develop this world that we don't know much about, as well as the rather large group of gems that populate the show's cast. It's hard to imagine, at least on the outset, who would be interested in a show about talking rocks. It's not like that has ever been done before. Oh wait, I kid, of course. Though while it's easy to make the comparison between Lustrous and Steven Universe, it's not an accurate one. Lustrous is like if Steven Universe was going through an angsty teenager phase of naive outlooks, counteracted by a harsh reality.
Things have been pretty crazy lately, and I've got a lot of feelings that are hard to talk about, so I put them in a song. I've put my trust in you.
The writing of the series, barring its slow introduction, is one of the things that makes this show unique. So much of each individual character is tied down to the actual science behind the gems, which is then highlighted even further by placing the mantle of main character onto a gem that physically can't handle the pressure. Foss initially is a conduit of internal anguish and self-loathing. But Foss starts to get grander ambitions, to fight against the world that says no, and eventually becomes a role model for anyone who is battling their own personal inadequacies. Of course, the Foss that exists by the end of the series is a very different character, and if you were to compare them side by side, it would be difficult to tell the similarities. This all leads to what I personally believe to be the current downfall with Lustrous' narrative. Though this is a temporary problem to be sure. Beyond Foss, there's virtually no development of the secondary cast. All other gems get introduced with some key personality traits and never expanded upon due to time. Both Foss and the world itself is where the development goes. In fact, when you tear down the unique elements of the world and the story itself, there is much about Lustrous that would fit into a very generic mold of a magical girl anime, perhaps explaining the overly feminine design of the characters whose gender originally in the manga was far more ambiguous. And you know, this heavy focus on Foss would be fine if that led to any semblance of narrative conclusion by the end of the series, but it doesn't. That said, it would not be wrong of me to say that Foss's character arc is one of the best in anime from last year, perhaps even the last couple of years, but the one thing that it's really missing is the final payoff, the culmination of why Foss went through this transformation in the first place. But apparently that's a story for another season. All of that is made up for in spades, however, because Land of the Lustrous is one of the most visually beautiful anime released at present. The one major plus side of having a fully CG anime about colorful gems is how clean and reflective the CG can make it look. It is an example of a series that is beautiful because of its CGI and not in spite of it. A lot of the cinematography in this series looks like it's set up to appear 2D if shown in still frames, but still have that range of motion that 3D allows. Something that's not really been done to this scale before. What this has allowed, though, is for you to be able to take a screenshot from almost any scene and have it look beautiful. Now, the show's director, Kyogoku, is no stranger to the blending of 2D and 3D animation. Previously, he was the director of the anime series Love Live! School Idol Project, a franchise known to swapping to 3D animation for a variety of dance numbers that the cast performs. Channeling that to a full series is just a logical step. While the character designs of the gems are a far cry from those Japanese idols, the combat scenes in the show do play off as a kind of intricate dance that's not really able to be replicated in either 2D animation or live action. Having those scenes done up in 3D allows for the camera to be free-ranged, untethered by either the laws of physics, as a live-action production would, or the careful planning of animation storyboards. Lustrous also had, in this humble fan's opinion, the best intro sequence of last year. Longtime viewers know that I like to judge an anime opening based on 3 pieces of criteria: the visuals, the music, and how both of these things fit the themes and narrative of the show itself. Lustrous checked off all 3 boxes with ease. Other shows from last year may have had more engaging visuals or a song that I would listen to on repeat for days after hearing it the first time, but Lustrous was the only one from last year to me that did all of that on top of being extremely fitting for the show that it was representing. However, as we wind down to the end of the video, I should explain why, after all of this praise, I still don't consider Lustrous to be the best anime of last year. That was a title I handed to Kinema Citrus's Made in Abyss, and the final 2 episodes of Lustrous are mostly my reasoning. While I stand by my statement that the character arc of Foss is one of the best in recent memory, the final moments in this arc are left with many a door left open, many a question left unanswered. And while Abyss did a similar thing in regards to several plot threads, Lustrous's way of wrapping things up felt less like a conclusion and more like a cliffhanger. And after so many years and so many shows that never get sequels, I have become less and less enthused when such an ending is used. Not only is it a cliffhanger to Foss's own story, but in the final episodes, the narrative is still introducing new characters and doing last-minute world building instead of trying to wrap things up. It's like when you leave for work in the morning, but constantly think of just one more thing that you have to quickly do before walking out the door, leaving you rushed and exhausted because of it. That sort of feeling. It doesn't help that the production of Lustrous began a number of years before the show even aired, leaving the very real possibility that it might be quite a number of years from now until we get a sequel. If we ever do. But I can still recommend for you to watch this series, and as such I am pleased to give Land of the Lustrous the Glass Reflection rating to buy it. It is a visual spectacle that sets an extremely high bar for the next show that wants to come around and be entirely animated in 3D. Now at least there's something favorable to compare it to instead of some of the less than stellar 3D animations of shows past. If you're interested in watching Land of the Lustrous, you can stream it from Amazon's streaming service or the streaming service High Dive. if you have access to either of those. If not, then the series will be available on home video formats from Sentai Filmworks in the near future. If you've watched Lustrous and can't wait to find out what happens next, in case the second season never materializes, you can then head over to our friends over at Bookwalker and pick up the original manga digitally. And there will be a coupon code down in the description in case you've never used their service before, so go check that out. For alternate anime recommendations, I have no illusions about attempting to recommend another 3D animated series to you guys because the quality just won't compare to this. Even with something like Kimono Friends, which I adore. I do. Not many others. However, I can still make recommendations based on similar narratives. So I'll start with Hibine Renmei, a series about a young angel-like being named Raka, who was just born into a world that she does not understand. You might find the story of Raka to be similar to Foss in a number of ways, though Raka is nowhere near as bubbly personality-wise. Second recommendation goes to Sound of the Sky, another series with a different kind of visual spectacle, but one that has a deeper story hidden beneath its layers of beauty. This one does lean much further towards the slice of life genre than Lustrous ever did though, so just keep that in mind. And between those two, you should hopefully find something to your liking. As always, a very special thank you to all of my patrons who make these videos possible and support my work. You guys are fantastic and I can't thank you enough. But specifically, I would like to thank patrons Victor Ekmark, Ryfen Bonaparte, Rune Jacobson, Joshua Garcia, Calhoun Boy, and Siri Yamako for being especially awesome. And until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.